would like to call upon has a vast amount of experience within the political arena. He is a former Member of Parliament, a former Labour MP of Coventry South East from 1983 to 1992. He is the National Chair of the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition, a member of the Socialist Party, and was once a City Councillor in Coventry from 1998 to 2012. That is none other than Dave Nellist.
Now we have a range of views on the platform that you'll listen to this afternoon. But the one thing that brings us together is that none of the main parties now speak for us. We're trying to find ways to give ordinary people a political voice. Many, perhaps most of us, used to vote Labour in the past. But Labour has taken us for granted. They believed our votes were theirs because we had nowhere else to go. Well, today is part of a process that's taking place across the country, which is questioning that. The Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition, of which I'm the National Chair, TUSC, we have 16 candidates in Coventry and 7 in Bedworth and Nuneaton in the council elections. We have stood down in Fossil. Mila, who's here today, was our candidate last year and got 7% in Fossil, but we have stood down our candidate in order to give support to Fahan, who you've just listened to. Every one of our candidates across the rest of Coventry are anti-war and are anti-austerity. Nationally, we have nearly 300 candidates standing in the council elections in 14% of the wards where elections are taking place. That makes us the 6th biggest party in the council elections. But without national media coverage and without hardly any funding, although we're the 6th biggest party, you may not hear much of us outside of this city. We know of 60 to 70 independent candidates outside the TUSC umbrella who are also standing on anti-war and anti-austerity platform in these council elections. And there may be more. If you know of other independents who are standing on that basis, please let me know at the end of the meeting, because on Tuesday, our national website, we hope to publish a list of every place in the country where there are independent and socialist candidates who, if you want to vote against the big parties, particularly for their support of Israel's murderous attack on Gaza, you can do so. The reason I use that phrase is that 4 days after the Hamas attack on Israel on October the 7th, the leader of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, was interviewed on the radio channel LBC. He said Israel had every right to cut off food, fuel and power to the 2 million civilians in Gaza. Let Gaza starve was the message he gave on that day. 6 months later, 34,000 people have been massacred, mainly women and children, and over 75,000 have been injured. There should be an immediate ceasefire and an end to the Israeli blockade, which is rapidly leading Gaza to mass starvation. Hundreds of thousands of people have demonstrated nationally, but the main parties have not listened to our voice. I think those demonstrations could be bigger and stronger if our trade unions, with 6.5 million members, played a more leading role in all those protests. Socialists also believe that Britain should not be arming Israel. This coming Wednesday, at a meeting of the biggest union branch in Coventry, I will be arguing that my union, Unite, should be organising a national meeting of all our union representatives in companies producing items and materials for the Israeli armed forces for use in Gaza or the occupied territories, and that they should be workers' sanctions. Leadership, I repeat, do not seriously oppose Israel's brutal war and the destruction of Gaza. They merely follow and echo the Tory government lead. So on Saturday, 6 days' time, on the 20th of April, I would ask you to come with us from Edgwick Park in Fossil down to the city centre, meeting at 12 noon at Edgwick Park, and make this the biggest demonstration we have seen so far in Coventry against the war on Gaza. There are leaflets on the table that perhaps you could take with you when you leave. There are also some leaflets making that point about trade unions that I've made, which have been produced by Coventry TUC, as well as election leaflets from Tusk. But the second and final area I want to deal with in my contribution is why we need a new type of opposition to the establishment parties in this country, is because of Tory austerity, which Zia mentioned as the first contribution. It continues to devastate our local communities. Life is getting harder for ordinary families. Food, fuel, rent, mortgages are still rising, whilst wages in real terms, except where trade unions fight back, are falling. We still haven't recovered from that crash that Zia mentioned in 2008, which was caused by the gambling and the speculation of the big banks. If wages for ordinary workers in this country had kept rising at the same rate they were rising up to 2008, since 2008, every worker in this room and in this city would be on average £14,000 a year better off than we actually are. It's not been the same for everybody. The seriously rich, the top 1,000 families in this country, as measured every year by the Sunday Times newspaper, have seen their wealth rise since 2008 from £250 billion between 1,000 families to today, or rather in 2021, £823 billion. Their wealth has tripled whilst our wages have gone down. And another price of that 15 years of austerity has been the cutting back on public services, from councils to education, from health to social services. We're the 6th richest country in the world. Yet in Coventry, as well as every town and city, we have people sleeping in our shop doorways. We have thousands of families in this city who rely on food banks every week in order to get food. And the volunteers who run those food banks can't cope any longer. Coventry Council has been robbed of hundreds of millions of pounds by the Tory government. And the effects are all around us, as Farhan has explained. Our areas are run down. Our streets are not cleaned regularly. We don't have staff looking after our parks. Our libraries are not funded properly. Our youth clubs have all been closed. Over 2,000 jobs have been cut from council employment because of Tory cuts and Labour inaction. That's 2,000 jobs that could have been there for our school leavers in this city. This city needs homes. I'm lucky. I've had 4 bright kids who've gone off to university, and I wanted them to have a decent place to live in when they went to those other university towns. I want the students who come to our city to have somewhere decent to live. But every time a bit of land comes free in the city centre, they build it a tower block for students. I want to ask the question, What about the thousands of 18-year-olds who leave school in our city and don't go elsewhere to a university? Who is building homes, council homes, at affordable rents for our school leavers when they leave this city? And those problems are all going to get worse, as our leaflet explains over on the table. This city is going to get less safe at night because shortly they're going to shut off the street lights from midnight every night. When elderly members of our families, newly suffering with dementia, go into a council PFI care home, their fees are about to go up. The creches that are available for women to leave children to go to those classes are all about to be closed, and the creche staff are all about to be sacked. The funding for the centre that the NHS refers people to in this city, where teenagers or adults have been victims of sexual abuse, the funding is being stopped in Coventry. The council tax benefit for 16,000 of the poorest families in Coventry is about to be cut again. And council tax is going up by 5%. We're all going to have to pay more and more for less and less services. So all our candidates, if elected, will be demanding that the City Council fight to get the Westminster government to restore the hundreds of millions of pounds they have stolen from our city, so we can improve the life for all families in all areas. And even if only one of us gets elected, it's possible to make a difference. Now, it's not easy. Councils and parliaments are set up not so much for individuals, but for parties. The simplest example to give for that is it needs two people to start a debate inside a council chamber. One person on their own cannot do it. But there's lots of things an individual or small group of councillors can do, and this is the point I want to finish on. George Galloway in Rochdale was mentioned. I've known George for nearly 40 years. We served in Parliament together in the 1980s. I don't agree with everything that George says, but against all the odds, he won that by-election to be a Member of Parliament in Rochdale. And the biggest impact he's made in the 6 weeks he's been an MP is not actually inside Parliament. It's outside Parliament, because he's given a load of independents the confidence that you can take on the big parties and you can win. And we need to start doing that as well in this city as well. So to finish, this is why it's important for the independent candidates standing in this election, and for the socialist candidates like myself in Coventry, and our candidates across the city and in Nuneaton and Bedworth, and across the country, who want to see a serious challenge to the way in which society is organised in Britain, to a fairer socialist society, to get, with your help, the best votes possible. Don't listen to Labour when they say don't vote for independence. They'll tell you it's not worth voting for principled people standing outside the main party structures. Well, I think it is. I know from the 14 years I spent as a Socialist Party councillor in Coventry Council that no struggle of local working people was not raised in that chamber. No battle that they were involved in didn't get support inside the council house. Winning in these elections can give a platform to ordinary people's campaigns against war and against austerity. As Ahmed will say in a minute, it can give a voice to the voiceless. It's worth doing. Help us build that alternative.